Joe, I say this as someone who lives in the state that likely carries out the most fraud, okay, and that's the state of California. I'm sad to report that literally no one in any position of power cares about fraud. They don't.
Joe Rogan was one of your biggest endorsers in 2024. He said he understands that the president's sort of plan to deport people here who are here illegally, but he also understands why critics compare ICE officers to the Gestapo asking people for their papers. What's your response to him?
During an interview with NBC News, President Donald Trump was asked to respond to criticism that popular podcaster Joe Rogan has leveled against ICE and its belligerent conduct in Minnesota. Now, did he lash out? Did he try to keep the peace? You never know with Trump. He's a bit of a wild card, but before we show you, Cenk, your 2 cents.
Yeah, Rogan's interesting because he said some things that were positive, checking Trump on ICE. And then sometimes he gets back in line, and that is surprising. So we'll give you the nuances, then we'll give you the polling and show you where the American people really are. And the polling tells the whole story, not just what you want to be true on the left or the right.
Now, the NBC host that you heard from, Tom Llamas, is correct that Joe Rogan has on multiple occasions shared concerns about ICE. For example, here was his response to the Renee Good shooting.
After that woman was shot, I think, unfortunately, well, everything's unfortunate about it, right? But one of the real problems is now ICE are villains. And now people are looking at them like murderous military people that are on the streets of our city, and they're masked up, which is also a problem, right? Because if you get arrested by a cop, you're allowed to ask the cop, what is your name and badge number? And you could film that cop. If you get arrested by an ICE agent, you have no such right. They're wearing a mask. They don't have to tell you. That's a problem. That's a problem on our city streets, right? It's complicated, obviously, but it's also very ugly. To watch someone shoot a US citizen, especially a woman, in the face, it just looked horrific to me. She didn't seem mentally healthy, but does that mean she should be shot in the head? Is there no other way to handle this?
So what was Trump's reaction to what we just heard Joe Rogan say following the Renee Good shooting? Let's watch.
Look, first of all, he's a great guy. We had a tremendous success before the election. I think it was his biggest interview ever, and over 300 million people. It was very good. She didn't want to do it, you know. She decided not to do it because she's not capable. But I spoke to him 3 days ago. We had a great conversation, and all I'm doing, I have to keep.
Did he mention this to you? Did you guys talk about this? The ICE enforcement?
Yeah. Just had a good conversation. I think he's a great guy, and I think he likes me too.
Yeah.
And you know, liking me isn't important. What happens is that I think we do a phenomenal job, but I don't think we're good at public relations.
For me, this story isn't about how Trump feels about Rogan's criticism. For me, this story is interesting because you had a conversation on the phone with Rogan 2 days ago. That kind of explains a lot about Rogan's kind of muted reaction to the Epstein files, for instance, muted reaction to Theo Von raising serious concerns about Israel and its undue influence over the United States. You know, these are topics that Joe Rogan used to be a bit of a trailblazer on, and all of a sudden very muted on these issues. And I just couldn't figure out why. But you know, if you're taking calls from the president, that access and that relationship is gonna make you handle these stories a little differently, I think.
Yeah, so I'm not reaching any conclusions. My jury is completely out, but it's weird, right? So I mean, you would think Rogan, Mr. Independent Podcaster, would be all over the Epstein files. Certainly his audience would want that. And so the fact that he's been so muted on it is a little strange, just noteworthy.
He had Mike Benz on, who's like, you know, one of Elon Musk's boys, and they talked about the Epstein files. Didn't talk about Israel at all, but you know, that was interesting.
Yeah, it's weird. He never mentions Israel. Maybe he just wants to stay out of it. Like, look, it's nothing but trouble. And
he didn't before. He didn't before.
Yeah, I'm not making excuses for him. We're telling you the things that I think he's doing wrong, right? Then you have Alex Jones, who all of a sudden is against the theories that he
that he built his entire career off of, and everyone thought he was crazy, including me. And it turns out some of those big conspiracy theories ended up being true, okay?
So we were talking about it in the context of Noam Chomsky the other day, but there is such a thing as controlled opposition, right? And so I'm not saying that for Rogan, but Alex Jones is a fascinating case, right?
I don't get it, yeah.
Yeah, and so you would think he should be ascendant now. All the conspiracy theories were true or something, and he's not. And so how do they get them to, if they get them to quiet down, how do they get them to quiet down? I don't know, maybe if the president calls you and says something or other, or somebody else calls you. I mean, remember too, like Steve Bannon, released the Epstein file. It turns out Steve Bannon's all over the Epstein file.
All over the Epstein, he is not to be trusted.
Yeah, he has hundreds of hours of tapes on Epstein, but won't release them, was trying to help massage his PR. Like, what is going on here?
So we did get some of the interview that Bannon did with Epstein as part of the, recent release of Epstein files, which I thought was really interesting. But I mean, look, what's very clear to me from the latest tranche of Epstein files is that Bannon did have a close relationship with Epstein.
Oh, they conspired together all the time.
Yeah.
Now Bannon could make excuses about, hey, look, those are some of the things I wanted or whatever. Okay, all right, but you're all over the files, brother, and you're the one who was so cozy with him. He trusted Bannon so much, he let Bannon tape him for hundreds of hours.
Yeah.
That's startling. So just grain of salt. But you know what? It's a good litmus test, because now when you see Theo Von and Tim Dillon and Andrew Schultz, well, Schultz, I don't know how much he's talked about Israel, but Dillon, Von, and many others, and by the way, almost everyone on the left, all the hosts on the left, credit to all of them, right? Because they passed the litmus test.
Yeah.
Because if you're weirdly protecting Israel at this late date, it makes you go,
Exactly.
Well, that's weird.
Now, in regard to polling, let's talk about it a little bit, because new polling from NPR has found that 65% of Americans believe that ICE has gone too far. That's the graphic that you're looking at right here. It's NPR, PBS News, Marist poll. And that's an 11-point increase from the summer. And it includes a whopping 77% of independents and 93% of Democrats. Still, only 27% of Republicans say ICE has gone too far, with 28% saying they haven't gone far enough.
Don't forget, Noble Mobile saving you a ton of money. So a lot of people are signing up now and beginning to realize, what the hell, why am I paying so much to Verizon and AT&T? So your bill's only $50 a month, but it can actually be less because they give you money back if you don't use your data. So if you're paying more than $50, there's no reason to not switch. It's crazy not to switch, because same phone, same number, same contacts, literally nothing changes. TYT.com/switch, TYT.com/switch. All right, we'll be right back.
But there's more. A Quinnipiac poll did get similar results. They found that 63% of voters disapprove of the way ICE is enforcing immigration laws. And that's an increase of 6 percentage points since early January, when 57% disapproved. Now let's take a look at the next graphic. Or actually, this is the right one. So clearly there is genuine outrage in the country about how federal immigration agents are conducting their operations. And that's why we've seen massive protests break out, not just in Minnesota, but in other major metropolitan areas of this country as well, all over the country, against ICE and the Trump administration's immigration crackdown. Now that may be part of why Trump also said during this interview that his administration needed a softer touch on immigration. But despite being willing to join in the criticism on ICE, Joe Rogan is now also simultaneously claiming that the protests are not actually organic. Now he's argued multiple times that they're an effort to distract from something else, something much more important. I don't want to give it away. You should hear from the horse's mouth. Watch.
If it wasn't for that Nick Shirley kid in those videos, and apparently Nick Shirley had been informed by the GOP there that this was all going on, so this gets exposed, it gets into the public zeitgeist, it becomes a huge news story. It's not a coincidence that the riots break out in the exact same place where all this fraud is being exposed, because ICE is everywhere. They're all over the place, but it's not. The most violent interactions are the interactions that are happening in the place where the most fraud has been publicly exposed. This is all by design. Why riots only in Minneapolis? And why riots in the place where there's an ungodly amount of fraud that has been discovered.
Coincidentally, right around the same time.
Exactly. Like instantaneously afterwards, the narrative completely changes. Everybody forgets about the fraud. Now all anybody cares about is ICE and fascists and Nazis.
Yeah.
Joe, I say this as someone who lives in the state that likely carries out the most fraud, okay, and that's the state of California. I'm sad to report that literally no one in any position of power cares about fraud. They don't. Okay, the Trump administration used the excuse of fraud to target liberal cities and blue states, but have they actually done anything about fraud? Of course not. Of course they haven't. I'll give you another example. You just had Dr. Oz visit Los Angeles, stand in front of an Armenian bakery business, and accuse the Armenian bakery business that's been operating in Van Nuys, California as long as I can remember. I'm familiar with the bakery. I literally go to the bakery. I'm familiar with it. He accused the bakery of carrying out Medicare fraud. Medicare fraud. Now, did he do that because he genuinely believes that the Armenian bakery carried out Medicare fraud or anything else? No. He didn't have any evidence. All he said was, look at the Cyrillic writing. It is indicative of an Armenian-Russian gang known to carry out Medicare fraud. Okay, it wasn't Cyrillic writing. It was Armenian writing, and it said tarm lavash, which means fresh lavash. It's a bread.
Aha! So they're making bread over there, huh? Yeah, get me some of that Armenian bread.
And I don't say that to deny that Medicare and Medi-Cal fraud happens in California. It does happen.
See.
But they don't care to actually investigate it and do something about it. They don't care. They're just weaponizing this as a way to retaliate against blue cities and blue states. And it makes me so angry.
Yeah, so look guys, let's work backwards from there. So first off, why is Dr. Oz doing that? Because he thinks we're the epicenter of Medicare fraud is that Armenian bakery? No, he seems to have picked it out of a hat, which like, to Anna's point, there are actually people who are doing Medicare fraud. In fact, there are Armenians who do Medicare fraud around here, but they didn't even bother investigating that.
No, because they don't care.
Yeah,
they don't care.
He didn't bother investigating, hey, I wonder what that sign means. Or is it really in that language? Like he didn't do any of that. He's just like, Armenian bad. I am now Turkish American inside the White House. Haha.
By the way,
right? Like, so that's his own particular agenda apparently.
They're so stupid, Cenk, they're so stupid.
Yeah.
They're so stupid. Armenians in LA, I'm not in this camp, but Armenians in LA overwhelmingly Trump stands. So you have a Trump administration official going to Armenian businesses, many of whom probably voted for Trump. And just a Turk smearing all these Armenians, not a good look, not a good look.
Yeah, so look, the Turk-Armenian thing is less important than getting the point across that they're doing it for whatever their own political purposes are, right? So for Dr. Oz, it happens to be attacking Armenian bakeries. He's like, they don't even have any crudité in here. Okay, so that's like a rando old school like beef from back in the day, apparently, I think. On the other hand, in Minneapolis, two things can be true at the same time. Was there fraud? Yes, to Anna's point, you could find that kind of fraud in every state.
Yes.
And we're trying to expose that in California and other places too. And I love that. If you think it's only Somalis, oh, come on, guys, please do better, right?
And notice how they always racialize it too, right?
Exactly.
The Armenian community in LA, oh, the Somalis in Minnesota, like.
Yeah, are there non-Armenians doing Medicare fraud in LA? Of course. Yeah. But they're trying to get you distracted. Look at hate the Somalis, hate the Armenians, etc. Don't look at fraud on an institutional level because fraud is everywhere.
Everywhere.
I mean, if you wanted to hit the biggest mountain of fraud in the government, it's not complicated. It's not in Minnesota or California. It's at the Pentagon. They can't account for $400 to $500 billion a year, right? I found the fraud. It's not complicated, let alone a million other things, right?
And one other thing I have to just debunk about what Rogan said there. I don't know why he thinks that there are only protests happening in like Minnesota or anywhere ICE is operating. That's just not true. It's just not true. There have been more than 300 ICE out protests held around the US. So no, the demonstrations aren't just happening in Minnesota as he's suggesting.
No, yeah, but what I was going to say, Anna, about that is, look, there's two theories. Joe's theory that Alex Preddy and Renee Good and everybody in Minnesota is part of the Somali plot, and they want to cover up the Somali fraud. Okay, I guess you could believe that, right? The other theory as to why ICE went more ballistic in Minneapolis is that since they were already targeting Minnesota, by the way, who happens to have a governor who ran for vice president and would logically run the next time around, and to character assassinate him would be perfect, right?
Are you saying it was politically motivated?
So once you already have this target, you go, okay, surge ICE into there, cause chaos, so we could blame Tim Walz and Fry and all the Democrats in Minnesota, and it's all their fault, and bring in even more people. But it backfired because they went too far. So okay, so I think that's what's happening there. And the last thing on the Minnesota situation, Rogan mentioned riots.
When did riots happen?
Where were the riots in Minnesota? Did anybody throw bricks through Starbucks windows? Was there a building set on fire? Did people go? I mean, there were no riots. What are you talking about? There was 2 people who slightly objected to ICE and got murdered. Right, and by the way, there are tons of protesters blowing whistles, protesting, but not doing any rioting, not any assaults, not violence, not any law breaking. So don't tell me this is riots.
Look, there were riots in the summer of 2020 that the media overwhelmingly would not cover. I get that. That's not happening this time around. And when you smear these people who are demonstrating as rioters, that communicates to them, look at that, even when we're doing that, we're avoiding riots, there's no looting, we still get smeared as rioters anyway.
Yeah, so now, last thing for me is back to the polling. Guys, I don't want you to just skip past that. And there was a word that was used in the article, we used it a second ago, and I want to correct it, okay? So first, on independents, when you have lost 77% of independents, you're a goner. So if you say, oh, you're biased. No, I said the same exact thing about Joe Biden. You lose over 70% of independents, you're done. Independents are larger than Republicans or Democrats. They're the largest political affiliation in America by a lot these days. You lost 77% of them, nah. So it doesn't mean overall, but it does mean for ICE. That's why Donald Trump is in retreat, right? And that's why Donald Trump's numbers are now terrible. This same poll had him at 39%. He's in the 30s, just like Biden was. But 51% strongly against, which is a record number. Because strongly against is usually a smaller number. 51% disapproval overall is already a terrible number. Strongly opposed is an awful number. Okay, now finally, we use the word only, and the article just kept saying it over and over again. That's probably how it snuck into our production document. But it's not only 27% of Republicans thinking that Trump went too far. Holy cow, 27% of Republican Trump voters, not just overall Trump voters, which has a lot of independents, they're already gone. Of the Republican voters for Trump, 27%, over a quarter, are like, no, that's way too far, man. That's too far, I don't want it. So guys, I tell you that because of 2 reasons. One, ICE going too far, the jury's in. The American people overwhelmingly think they went too far. If you're in the camp of no, but everybody on X says, all my friends on X love it. Okay, sad day for you. That's not what this is. And it's not like this is close polling in the swing states. It's gigantic and obvious, right? The second reason I mention it is, if you're on the left, guys, you see there's a quarter of Trump voters that want everything he wants and amplified, even more so, right? And now you see there's a quarter of Trump's Republican voters who are like, not just Epstein, not just Israel, but ICE is a bridge too far and has gone too far. So if you take that 27% and you call them a racist, fascist, etc., like the guys on the other end of the spectrum, then you're gonna needlessly turn them off and they're gonna wanna retreat back to their original position. Instead, I think the right and smart thing to do is to say, thank you, brother, for noticing that ICE went too far and for helping to get Trump to come back from it so we don't have these thugs in our streets. Way to join an alliance of real Americans who care about the Constitution and doing things right. Let's encourage them and let's welcome them. I don't think that's complicated politically, and not just strategically. But morally, they're telling you they're on the right side. That's awesome. That's good news. So separate out different kinds of Trump voters. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.